Evening, fellow patriots. I'm your host, Chi-Town Zone. And as always, thank you for taking this opportunity to join me. If I were to tell you that I was upset this morning, that would have been an understatement. I'm sure that many of you had already seen, many of you have heard, many of you may have been just as upset as I was. Many have even wrote that their blood pressure went through the roof when they heard the news. Some weren't surprised, to say the least. And others, I'm sure they had smiles on their faces. Many of you seen Nancy Pelosi this morning speak. And yes, the Democrat Party are proceeding on with attempting to impeach President Trump. But when you really think about it, is there really anything to worry about? Then again, when you think about it, not really, to say the least. Many of the Republican senators, Senator Collins, Gates, Mitch McConnell, of course Mitch McConnell as well, even stated that the bill will be DOA, dead on arrival, once it makes its way to the Senate. Then, of course, there will be a trial, and many of you already know that the Republicans will force the Democrats to testify. Old Nervous Nancy, Adam Shifty Shift, and of course, creepy Joe Biden and his son, Hunter. And of course, maybe even Nadler and many other key players who continue to falsely accuse President Trump of Russia collusion, and then now, of course, Ukraine and his conversation between himself and Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky, in which he simply stated as well, there was no wrongdoing, he was never pressured in any way. But somehow, magically, the desperate Democrat Party still continues to believe that there was collusion. Then, of course, they falsely accused President Trump of quid pro quo. And then when that backfired in their faces, when old Shifty Shift's number one key witness testified, based on nothing more than hearsay and opinion, they switched from quid pro quo to bribery. And then, of course, that backfired in their faces just yesterday during the Judiciary Committee hearing when 4 professors of law were invited to testify, in which 3 of them were invited by the crooked, desperate, radical Democrat Party, and then the other one, Jonathan Turley, who was invited by the Republicans. And of course, sadly, he was the only one who was invited. And as always, it just goes to show you, as others have said, just how completely unfair this entire thing has been since this whole impeachment sham has began. But then again, should we be surprised, to say the least? It was only yesterday, it was Nadler and all of the main players of the radical Democrat Party once again accusing President Trump of Russia collusion and accusing Russia of interfering with the 2016 election. And even though that whole thing has been proven to be completely wrong, the Democrat Party continued to hold on to the notion that yes, Russia colluded with the 2016 election. You cannot be that serious that you do not trust the American people who went to the polls to elect President Trump. And now that he's been elected since November of 2016, the Democrat Party has done nothing but try to get President Trump impeached. And it's not fair at all. Because why? They do not trust the people. They've been doing all they can within 3 whole years to try to get a duly elected sitting president removed from office based on the fact that they are butthurt. They cannot stop crying over the fact that they lost. And of course, neither can Hillary. Or should I say Hitlery? That woman is so evil and she is crooked. And then, of course, now that, the possibility, with the impeachment coming of President Trump, many are already speculating. Some have even gone on to state that, yes, Hillary is going to jump back in the race. Of course, I've been following H.A. Goodman, of course, who's been covering this story quite well. I think he's been covering it for over a year now. Of course, many of you already know he was a Democrat. And of course, he was for Bernie Sanders. And then when Hillary cheated Bernie Sanders, in which I'm sure many of you remember that, of course, he was very upset by this, and he ended up flipping Republican. And now that he's flipped Republican, many others who are still devout Democrats or registered Democrats are just continue to mock H.A. Goodman day and night. They call him a liar and every other name in the book I can imagine. But the man really knows what he's talking about. If you watch him, he really knows the ins and the outs of this entire thing. Many of us already know that it's no secret, though. Hillary's already stated that if she's going to, she needs to decide quickly. But with this whole thing with impeachment, there's no doubt about it. Hillary may just very well join the race again. But no worries. We already know President Trump is going to beat each and every one of these senators running for office come 2020. You can bet your high end that once this bill makes its way to the Senate, the Republican Party is going to force the Democrats to testify. And I can promise you this, there will be indictments. I can almost hear those shackles unsnapping and those chains rattling now. Did you know that at least 8 members, people who were involved with Hillary during the 2016 campaign, have already been indicted? I think it was just this past week. You can believe it's coming. Oh, Shifty Shift and Nervous Nancy and Nadler and all of them. Creepy Joe Biden, who actually enjoys kids rubbing his hairy legs, which is absolutely disgusting, and are nervous as can be. They've got to be crapping in their pants right now because this is what they wanted. And now that they got it, you better believe the crap is about to hit the fan. And boy, I can hardly wait. Because I, for one, am getting sick and tired of this. You want to talk about bias? Look how Carlin, professor of the law, absolutely attacked one of President Trump's youngest sons, Barron Trump. You talk about desperate. And then to sit there and just look stone-faced when Gatz called her out about it. But of course she apologized. But it just isn't fair. You want to talk about the irony of this entire situation? Look at what the Democrats are doing now. It was law professor Jonathan Turley who even called them out on this. And I may be paraphrasing this a little bit, but it's funny how the desperate Democrat Party accuses President Trump of abusing his powers. And look at what you're doing now. And it's funny, they're accusing President Trump now of doing the same thing. Boy, you just can't make this stuff up. And today you may notice that I am a little bit upset about this. But I'm not too worried, to say the least. Because President Trump and the Republican Party are going to drain the swamp. Just as President Trump promised. He's going to go after every single one of these guys. Whether it be Adam Schiff, Nervous Nancy, or Joe Biden's son Hunter. Of course, we already know Joe Biden is guilty of bribery. But the Democrats obviously don't seem to think so. And what's even more crazy about it is Joe Biden openly admitted this on camera, that he would withhold billions of dollars of aid if Ukraine does not fire the AG. Of course, this was the Attorney General, the individual who was investigating Burisma. And of course, Joe Biden's son, who was making somewhere between 50 grand to 80 grand a month, working for a business he knew nothing about, he had absolutely no experience in. You can't make this stuff up, guys. But we're going to be watching very carefully. And of course, I will be doing my very best to monitor this as well. But with that being said, Saints and fellow patriots, under the sound of my voice, I urge each and every one of us, fellow Americans, to continue to pray for President Trump. Let's pray for his family and his administration. And with that being said, God bless the President of the United States, and may God bless America. Trump 2020, baby. You better get ready, because the swamp is about to be drained.